Why is Saudi Arabia called the custodian of the Two Holy Mosques? Hidden truth behind the royal title. Is it just a title or something much bigger? Every year, millions of Muslims from across the globe gather in Mecca and Medina, not just for spiritual fulfillment, but because these cities are the very heart of Islamic identity. But have you ever stopped to ask, why does Saudi Arabia call itself the custodian of the Two Holy Mosques? Is it just a symbolic title? Is it a political flex? Or is it something far deeper? Something that touches the core of power, religion, and global influence in the Muslim world? This isn't just about mosques. This is about control. This is about legitimacy. This is about who holds the keys to the most sacred places in Islam. The origin of the title, a history they don't teach in schools. The title, Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques, or in Arabic, Khadim al-Haramain al-Sharifain, didn't start with Saudi Arabia. In fact, it dates back centuries. From the Ayyubids to the Mamluks to the Ottoman sultans, rulers throughout Islamic history have taken this title to signify one thing: religious authority over Mecca and Medina, legitimacy in the eyes of the Muslim Ummah, a divine responsibility or opportunity to lead. But here's the plot twist. The title disappeared for decades, until 1986, when King Fahd of Saudi Arabia dropped his title of His Majesty and officially declared himself the custodian of the Two Holy Mosques. This wasn't a minor name change. This was a massive political and religious move. And the timing? No coincidence. Why 1986? The power shift you didn't see coming. Let's unpack the context. The Iranian Revolution, 1979, had just shaken the Islamic world. Ayatollah Khomeini was claiming religious leadership and exporting Shia influence. The siege of the Grand Mosque in Mecca, 1979, had humiliated the Saudi state. Militants had taken over Islam's holiest site. Yes, gunmen inside the Kaaba itself. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan had lit the fire of Islamic resistance. The global Islamic awakening was at its peak, and Saudi Arabia needed to reassert its spiritual authority. So what did the House of Saud do? They played the ultimate religious card. They didn't just call themselves kings. They became guardians of Islam's heartland. They became, in the eyes of over 1.8 billion Muslims, the defenders of the Kaaba and the Prophet's mosque.
What are the Two Holy Mosques? Before we go deeper, let's clarify. Al-Masjid al-Haram, Mecca, home of the Kaaba, the black cube Muslims face during prayer, site of Hajj and Umrah, the sacred pilgrimages that define Islamic spirituality, the most sacred site in all of Islam. Al-Masjid an-Nabawi, Medina, the Prophet Muhammad's mosque containing his tomb, second only to Mecca in religious status, a place where millions come to feel spiritually reborn. These are not just mosques. These are epicenters of global Islamic consciousness. And whoever controls them controls the narrative of Islam. Saudi Arabia's role as the custodian, benevolence or strategy. Saudi Arabia invests billions every year into expanding, modernizing, and maintaining these two holy sites. Massive renovations of the Haram in Mecca, expanding capacity to host millions during Hajj. High-speed rail connecting Mecca and Medina. Security, health, and crowd control systems that operate on military-grade logistics. From the outside, it seems like an act of pure devotion. But ask any political analyst, and they'll tell you, this is also a form of soft power on steroids. Because when Saudi Arabia controls the Hajj, the fifth pillar of Islam, it controls a global religious flow of people, money, influence, legitimacy. And that makes Saudi Arabia not just a country, but a central player in the religious geopolitics of the Muslim world. The provocative question: should one country own the holiest sites? Now here's where it gets controversial. Some argue that no single nation should control Mecca and Medina. Others suggest an international Islamic body should oversee the holy sites, like a kind of Vatican model for Islam. Iran, for example, has publicly criticized Saudi management of Hajj, especially after tragic stampedes and political tensions. But the Saudis, they hold the line. Only we are fit to protect these sacred places. We are not kings, we are custodians. Is that humility or brilliant branding? Because let's be honest, custodian sounds humble, but it also places Saudi Arabia above every other Muslim country in religious stature. Control, controversy, and the religious monopoly of Mecca and Medina. The unspoken power of hosting the Hajj. Think about this for a second. Every single able-bodied Muslim is religiously obligated to perform the Hajj at least once in their lifetime, if they can afford it. This is not optional. This is not cultural. This is mandatory. So what happens when one country controls the entire infrastructure of that obligation? Billions of dollars flow into Saudi Arabia every year. From visa fees to accommodations, transportation, and services, Hajj and Umrah are a multi-billion-dollar industry. Some estimates say Saudi Arabia earns over $12 billion annually from pilgrimage alone. And what does that money buy? Global political leverage. Massive soft power influence over Muslim-majority nations. A way to export Wahhabi ideology through funded mosques, universities, and religious material. But here's the kicker. No other country can offer this. No other government can replicate this, because only one nation controls Mecca and Medina. And with that control comes an uncomfortable truth. Saudi Arabia holds the religious chokehold on over 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Controversy after controversy. Who gets to enter Islam's holiest sites? Saudi Arabia often restricts access to the holy cities based on political alignments and diplomatic ties. Iranian pilgrims often face heavy scrutiny, and during tense times, their numbers are reduced or outright banned. Qatar during the Gulf crisis, pilgrims faced roadblocks. Rohingya refugees, stateless Muslims struggle to even get Hajj visas.
Opposition clerics from within the kingdom or critics from abroad, silenced or blacklisted. Let that sink in. A religious obligation in Islam, dictated by God, is being regulated by a government based on political convenience. So the question must be asked, has Saudi Arabia turned Hajj into a tool of foreign policy? Surveillance in the sacred land. Big Brother inside the Haram. Under the banner of safety and modernization, Saudi Arabia has installed facial recognition cameras, drones monitoring pilgrim flow, and electronic wristbands to track pilgrims' movements. On the surface, this sounds like crowd management, but critics argue, is Mecca becoming a surveillance state? Imagine you're performing one of the most sacred acts of worship in your life, surrounded by AI-powered monitoring systems, security forces, and data trackers. Yes, it's efficient. Yes, it prevents stampedes. But is it spiritually intrusive? The modernization of Mecca. Progress or profanation. In the past 2 decades, Mecca has undergone a dramatic transformation, and not everyone is happy about it. What's changed? Ancient Ottoman-era buildings? Demolished. Historic homes of Sahaba, companions of the Prophet? Flattened. Mecca skyline, now dominated by the Abraj Al-Bait towers, including a 5-star hotel, shopping mall, and a massive clock tower towering over the Kaaba. Some call it progress. Others call it spiritual gentrification. Critics say, the cradle of Islam is being turned into a luxury theme park for the rich. Pilgrimage packages are now tiered by wealth, and economic disparity in the Hajj is more visible than ever. So we must ask, is Mecca still a symbol of spiritual equality, or has it become a showcase of Saudi Arabia's capitalist ambitions, dressed in religious garments? A global struggle for Islamic leadership. Saudi Arabia isn't the only nation vying for religious influence. Iran claims leadership of the Shia world. Turkey, under Erdogan, has positioned itself as a neo-Ottoman revivalist power, restoring its Islamic heritage. Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority country, has started flexing its own Islamic voice. Even Pakistan and Egypt hold significant religious institutions and scholars, but none of them can compete with one thing: the keys to Mecca and Medina. And that, more than oil, more than politics, more than military, is the nuclear core of Saudi Arabia's geopolitical dominance. They don't need to convince you they're in charge. They just show you the Kaaba and remind you, you can't get there without them. Wahhabism, branding, and the battle for Islam's soul. Saudi Arabia's greatest export isn't oil, it's ideology. Forget crude oil, forget petrochemicals. The real export that Saudi Arabia has pushed for the last century is Wahhabism, a puritanical, ultra-conservative interpretation of Islam. This ideology forms the backbone of the Saudi state, and it's been aggressively exported across the Muslim world through massive mosque-building campaigns, scholarship programs, and religious institutes, state-funded Quran printing centers, Islamic textbooks translated into dozens of languages, media channels and satellite TV stations broadcasting 24/7 Islamic content. And what legitimizes this religious outreach? You guessed it. We are the custodians of the Two Holy Mosques. It's a trump card, a theological armor, a way to neutralize criticism, because how could the guardian of the Kaaba be wrong? But here's the burning question. Is Saudi Arabia preaching Islam or controlling its global narrative? The global pushback. Muslims are waking up. Wahhabism may have spread like wildfire for decades, especially in the post-9/11 War on Terror era, when Saudi Arabia sought to reframe its religious influence. But it's now facing a global backlash. Muslims from Africa to South Asia to the West are asking, why is Islam's rich diversity, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, Ash'ari, Sufi, being erased by a single state-sponsored version? Why are cultural traditions labeled haram just because they don't align with Saudi religious norms? Why do Saudi-trained imams often reject centuries of scholarly consensus in favor of a rigid, literalist view? And most damningly, is Wahhabism truly Islam, or is it state religion by design? Because what better way to secure loyalty, stifle dissent, and extend influence than by shaping how 1.8 billion people define their faith? Follow the money. Religious branding as a tool of empire. Let's get brutally honest. The title Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques is the ultimate religious brand. Think of it like this. Coca-Cola owns happiness. Apple owns innovation. Saudi Arabia owns Islam's holiest real estate. And that brand gives them leverage. In politics, you want to condemn Saudi policies? Be careful, they host the Hajj. You want access to Muslim voters? Align with the kingdom. In business, halal certification authorities? Many follow Saudi standards. Islamic banks often benchmark against Sharia boards in Riyadh. In media, Islamic influencers and preachers? Many receive Saudi funding or invitations to Saudi-led religious conferences. The brand isn't just spiritual, it's commercial, ideological, and geostrategic. Religion as statecraft, the custodian title as a political weapon. Let's get surgical. The Saudi royal family, the House of Saud, isn't just ruling by sword, oil, or dollars. They rule by divine association. By adopting the title Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques, they link themselves directly to Islamic sacred duty. Position any attack on the monarchy as an attack on Islam. Protect their throne with the Quran as their shield. And guess what? It works. Dissidents can be delegitimized as enemies of the faith. Critics in the Muslim world hesitate. Can we really challenge the guardian of the Kaaba? Reformists are painted as secularists or Western puppets. So while the world debates oil prices and arms deals, the real fortress is ideological. The throne is wrapped in the sacred shroud of Mecca and Medina.
Is the title justified or a global gaslight? Let's revisit the core idea. Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques, a title that suggests service, humility, guardianship. But what we see is strict control over who enters and when, tight regulation of religious expression, export of a singular ideology under the guise of true Islam, religious rituals commodified for wealth and tourism, historic Islamic heritage bulldozed in favor of modern hotels and malls. Is this guardianship? Or is this religious monopoly? Is this devotion to God? Or is this strategic branding for global dominance? The global Islamic reaction, rebellion, reform, and the fight for Mecca. Enough is enough. The Muslim world is pushing back, For decades, Saudi Arabia's control of Mecca and Medina was unquestioned, even revered by many Muslims. But in recent years, that blind trust has started to crack. Here's what's happening. Scholars from Egypt to Indonesia are speaking out. The Haramain are not property of any nation-state. They belong to the Ummah, the entire Muslim nation. Countries like Iran, Turkey, Malaysia, and even Nigeria are asking, why should one kingdom, with its own political interests, be the gatekeeper of sacred obligations? And the Muslim public? Social media has unleashed a new generation of critics, bold, unfiltered, global. You'll hear things like, Hajj shouldn't be a luxury cruise for the rich. They destroyed Islamic heritage to build shopping malls. This is not Islam. This is real estate in a robe. Mecca belongs to God, not to the House of Saud. And for the first time in centuries, there's a genuine debate happening. Should Saudi Arabia still be the custodian of the two holy mosques?
The case against Saudi custodianship. Let's lay it out, cold and clear. The critic's perspective. 1. Political weaponization. Saudi Arabia has repeatedly used access to Hajj and Umrah as a political tool, restricting Iranian pilgrims, blocking Qatari citizens during the 2017 Gulf Rift, allegedly prioritizing allies over rivals, imposing quotas and price hikes that favor the wealthy elite. Is that guardianship or gatekeeping? 2. Erasure of Islamic heritage. More than 95% of Mecca's historical buildings have been destroyed. Homes of the Prophet's companions, ancient Ottoman structures, early Islamic grave sites, all replaced with hotels, malls, and VIP viewing towers. Where's the spiritual sanctity in a $5,000 Hajj suite with a Kaaba view? 3. Monopoly on Islamic identity. Through institutions like King Fahd Quran Printing Complex, Islamic University of Medina, Saudi-funded mosques worldwide, the kingdom promotes a state-defined version of Islam, sidelining centuries of diverse Islamic scholarship. And every time they're challenged, they wave the title like a shield. We are the custodians. We know best. But is there an alternative? Let's play with the unthinkable idea. What if Mecca and Medina were placed under international Muslim oversight? Yes, a neutral body composed of diverse scholars and states representing the global Muslim Ummah. Call it the Islamic Holy Cities Council, or the Organization for the Protection of Haramain. Imagine equal access for all Muslims, regardless of nationality or politics, transparent financial audits of Hajj income, restoration of Islamic historical sites, reduced commercialization, and a refocus on spiritual depth. Would it be perfect? Of course not. But could it return Mecca to its rightful role, the spiritual, not political, heart of Islam? That's the debate. Why it hasn't happened and may never. Saudi Arabia will never surrender Mecca, period. Here's why. 1. Religious legitimacy equals political survival. The royal family's rule is not based on democracy. It's not based on military conquest. It's based on, we protect Islam's holiest places. Remove that, and their entire narrative collapses. 2. Massive revenue stream. Hajj and Umrah are not just religious events. They are economic engines, driving infrastructure, tourism, transportation, hospitality. Billions are at stake every year. 3. Geopolitical leverage. The title gives Saudi Arabia a soft power nuke. No Muslim-majority country wants to be seen as disrespecting the custodian of the Kaaba. It's diplomatic suicide in the Islamic world. So even nations that disagree stay silent. Muslims in the West, a new front in the struggle. The rising generation of Muslims in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and across Europe are not bound by the old reverence for the Saudi state. They're more critical, more educated, more diverse in theological background, and deeply connected via digital platforms. And when they ask questions like, why can't women pray freely in every part of the mosque? Why is the Prophet's mosque surrounded by luxury hotels? Why are scholars with different views banned from entering? They don't accept because Saudi says so as an answer. This is the crucible of change, and the kingdom knows it. Vision 2030 and the future of Mecca, sacred or spectacle. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is on a mission to modernize Saudi Arabia through Vision 2030. What does this mean for the holy cities? Introduction of tourism visas for non-religious visitors. Proposals to expand Mecca's economy beyond just Hajj. Tech-driven pilgrimage experiences, AI, VR, facial recognition. Luxury pilgrimage packages aimed at wealthy Muslims worldwide. But critics are sounding alarms. This is not Vision 2030. This is Las Vegas with minarets. At what point does modernization become desecration? What if Saudi Arabia fell? Who would control Mecca? Behind the curtain, the fragile illusion of permanence. The House of Saud presents itself as eternal, chosen, destined, divinely protected. But history, it says something very different. Let's not forget, the Ottoman Empire, which ruled Mecca for 400+ years, collapsed in a flash. The Hashemites, guardians of the holy cities before the Saudis, were pushed aside in a British-backed coup. The Saudi dynasty itself has survived by the sword, by oil, and by alliance with Wahhabi clerics, not by divine right. So let's face a brutal, reality-based question. What if the Saudi regime fell tomorrow? What if the monarchy collapsed due to internal rebellion, economic collapse, a foreign invasion, a palace coup? It's not fantasy, it's geopolitical forecasting. And if it happened... Scenario: the fall of Riyadh, chaos in the sacred land. The implications would be earth-shattering. 1. Immediate power vacuum in Mecca and Medina. With no ruling authority, the holy cities would face riots and looting, militant takeovers, competing factions claiming legitimacy, foreign intervention from Islamic powers, Turkey, Iran, Egypt, Pakistan. The Haramain would become a global religious battlefield. 2. OIC crisis mode. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 57 member nations, would be forced into emergency session. But could they agree on anything? Iran would push for Shia representation. Turkey might attempt neo-Ottoman stewardship. Indonesia, Pakistan, Malaysia could demand neutral oversight. Gulf states would try to salvage Saudi leadership or install a puppet regime. It would be nothing less than a theological Cold War, fought with flags, fatwas, and fear. Who should control Mecca and Medina in a post-Saudi world? Let's explore the hypotheticals. Option 1. A new Islamic caliphate. Some revivalist thinkers would argue for a pan-Islamic caliphate, one religious government ruling all Muslims with Mecca as its capital. Pros: unified vision of Islam in theory, restoration of the classical Islamic model. Cons: whose caliphate, Sunni or Shia? Which school of thought dominates? Mass alienation of Muslims who reject theocratic rule. Reality check: it's a recipe for sectarian war. Option 2. A united Islamic council, the UN of Islam. Imagine a rotating council formed of respected scholars and elected representatives from every major Muslim region, administering Mecca like a sacred trust, not a national property. Think one seat for Africa, one for South Asia, one for the Arab world, one for Southeast Asia, one for the global diaspora, and so on. Pros: balance of power, shared accountability, transparent Hajj management, ideological pluralism. Cons: can Muslims unite long enough to make it work? Could it resist power grabs by big states like Turkey, Iran, or Egypt? Would the West interfere? Option 3. Mecca becomes an independent sacred zone. This one's wild, but hear it out. What if Mecca and Medina became like a Vatican-style independent religious territory, governed by an international board of scholars, militarily neutral, economically independent, no national flag, only allegiance to the Ummah, not a state? Pros: ultimate neutrality, detachment from oil money, politics, nationalism, global respect. Cons: logistical nightmare, no natural resources, open target for extremists or rogue states. Still, is it that much crazier than letting a single absolute monarchy claim divine custodianship? A religion bigger than any one kingdom. Islam has survived the fall of Andalusia, the Mongol invasion of Baghdad, the collapse of the Ottoman Caliphate, colonialism, crusades, and countless puppet regimes. Mecca has always remained, and it will survive after the House of Saud too. But here's the hard question for the Ummah. Will we let our most sacred sites become corporate holy lands, run like a megamall with a minbar? Or will we reclaim the Haramain as the common spiritual inheritance of every Muslim, rich or poor, Sunni or Shia, black or white, Arab or non-Arab? Because the Kaaba has no flag. The Prophet's mosque does not belong to a monarchy. And Islam? It was never meant to be branded, monopolized, or marketed like a franchise.
Conclusion: the Kaaba has no flag. The title, Custodian of the Two Holy Mosques, sounds noble, sacred, humble. But as we've uncovered, behind the humility lies a calculated power structure, a religious monopoly, and a centuries-long game of divine branding. Saudi Arabia didn't just inherit Mecca and Medina, it weaponized them. It turned pilgrimage into politics. It turned faith into foreign policy. It turned the sacred into strategy. And while the Haramain remain untouched by time, the system surrounding them is not eternal. It is man-made, fragile, replaceable. Because the truth is this: the Kaaba doesn't belong to kings. It doesn't answer to oil, to flags, or to royal decrees. It was not built by monarchs. It was built by prophets. And Mecca? It was meant to unify us, not divide us. So the question every Muslim, every thinker,
every believer must ask is this: who truly deserves to be called the custodian of the two holy mosques? A king with absolute power? A council representing all Muslims? Or no one, because sacred places were never meant to be owned? One day, the title will change, the dynasty will fall, the politics will shift, but the Kaaba will remain, silent, unshaken, eternal, waiting for those who come not to rule, but to serve. Title, power, control. In the end, it all comes down to this: God doesn't need custodians, people do. The question is, what kind of custodians will we choose to be?
Thank you for watching this far. If you made it to the end, you're not just a viewer. You're part of a growing community that dares to ask the uncomfortable questions, challenge the narratives, and think deeper about the world and the faith we live in. This topic isn't just about religion, it's about power, history, identity, and the future of over 1.8 billion people. So if this shook something in you, if it sparked a thought or made you see things differently, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you never miss what they don't want you to hear. Drop your thoughts in the comments. No filters here, just real discussion. And if you believe more people need to see this, share it. Because silence keeps systems in place. But the truth breaks them. Subscribe now. Stay loud, stay conscious, and always question everything.